The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the Association for Software Testing, its management, sponsors, or staff. All right, folks, so welcome to Cast Live Midday, I guess. We decided to do a second round with our friend Karen Johnson. Dee's going to be joining me again today, and we're going to do a second round. This is a follow-up from last night's conversation. Apparently, we got some feedback via Karen that, one, we hadn't covered all three of the points she had mentioned.
We only got through one.
We ran out of time, and so she wanted to cover the next 2 points and maybe fill us in with some of the reaction that's been going on. So I'm going to toss it to Karen.
Okay, great. All right, so thanks for having me back.
You bet.
So there were two topics. So one was to talk about the presentation that I did yesterday, which was on thinking tools, which I'd love to talk about it more, but I need to put that one aside for right now. So
Sure.
If you're live and listening, there's ways to find out more in my presentation, and we'll put that one to the side. Something happened yesterday that was really interesting, and a brief of it goes like this. James Christie gave a presentation on standards, and it was very interesting. A lot of conversation about ISO standards, certifications, and the general vibe in the room was a lot of people agreeing that there are standards that are out there that in some ways are hurtful and harmful. But there's not always a very well-organized group of people to sort of provide a rebuttal. So think of things as a debate forum, an opportunity to say, I heard your idea, but I have an opposing view, and I want it to be heard. And I think there's a lot of people in this community, I won't say everyone, because I can't speak for everyone, there's a lot of people in this community who feel very strongly that way, and have for a long time.
Yeah.
But have not been able to kind of get it together and come together and sort of made a formal kind of return comment to the community. And it's not easy to make a return comment to kind of an unknown, unnamed organization or a number of individuals. It's not like two people debating, it's sort of two mindsets debating, and how do you find like the right person to sit on the other side of the table? I could argue with Ben. I can feel that. So this conversation, it was a very interesting presentation, and a person at the end asked the speaker, what do you think we could do?
Fair.
And I really felt for the speaker. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter who the speaker is. That's a tough one.
Right.
How the heck are you supposed to answer that? And I'm sitting in the back, all the way at the back of the room, bubbling, going nuts internally, feeling like, I know, right? Like, we've been agreeing about this for a while, so what are we going to do? So I had an idea, and I put that offer out to the community, and I said, what if we're at the very fresh start of the conference, we've got a couple of hundred people here, lots of like minds, sure, some opposing views as well, but a lot of like minds on the sort of standard certification problem. What if we wrote a petition? What if we wrote something and had people sign it? A collective thought, collect signatures. Because, wow, it's tough when you have either an employer or a client who says, okay, you're not on board with certification. There's a pun in there. But what do you believe in? And are there other people like you? And what's the alternative possibility?
Sure.
So a couple of us, Fiona Charles, Ian McCowett, thank you, James Christie and I got together and decided that we would write something down. And I keep looking down at the table because it's in front of me and it's on the phone and I don't want it to go away. We wrote two things. We wrote literally a call to action to the ISO. So this is a distinct organization with a distinct call to action. And I want to read it if you can indulge me that long. Okay,
good.
It's short, don't worry. It says, to the President of the International Organization for Standardization, we, the undersigned, hereby petition the International Organization for Standardization to suspend publication of ISO IEK 29119-4 and ISO IEK 29119-5, and to withdraw ISO IEK 29119-1, ISO IEK 29119-2, and ISO IEK 29119-3. I know it's hard to retain all that, but it's in writing, so we'll have that too. The last bit of it is our view that significant disagreement and sustained opposition exists amongst professional testers as to the validity of these standards, and that there is no consensus per definition 1.7 of ISO IEC Guide 2:2004 as to their content.
Okay.
So I know that a lot of people hearing that was a pretty dense thing to hear,
Right.
might not understand the particulars. I would encourage you to ask questions and seek more.
And to be clear, if I recall correctly, the ISO standard is a purchased standard, correct? Or is it freely available for someone to review?
Good point. We recognize there's a lot of financial rewards and benefits to certain individuals based on these standards. Yes, you do have to purchase things.
Okay, all right. So if someone wanted to review this and say, okay, what are they talking about? Their only real option would be either to have a copy of this within their company or what have you, or purchase a copy, correct?
That's a good point.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, in
That's an
case
excellent point.
somebody goes, Googling or Binging for this, they
Right.
aren't frauded at every turn.
I don't
That's true.
know how long of a conversation that is. Do you have like the high points of what some of these standards are for the people who don't have any idea what ISO 91246, that's a really in-depth
I
question, I
do, but
suspect.
I think I'm going to want to defer that one too because it is
Sure.
in depth, and I think if I try to encapsulate it, I could do it harm.
Okay.
And,
Fair.
and there is a second piece. So the second piece, it needs a name. So probably similar to the Agile Manifesto, we feel that we have a manifesto as well. It needs a name, I'll be honest. It's not named right now. But it reads as follows. Again, it's fairly short and a lot easier to read. Okay. I, as a professional software tester, believe, and there's about 5 bullets, that standards compliance is no substitute for knowledge and skills, and that possessing a certificate demonstrates neither. That companies have been convinced that only certified testers should be hired. That organizations who use certification as a surrogate for rigorous selection processes place the quality of their testing at risk. That organizations who make money from creating or promoting standards and certifications are biased in their thinking by the potential financial rewards of convincing organizations that only certified testers are professional testers. Those organizations may include those who sell training, consulting, or other related services. The testing benefits from diversity and not homogeneity. I'm not pronouncing that right, pardon me. That testing is not a profession that can be standardized, but instead needs to remain an intellectual professional activity. And that choosing not to be certified does not mean I do not take my profession seriously. It is because I take my profession seriously that I choose not to be certified. So here at the conference, there are 2 paper documents circling around. People are reading them and they're signing them. You can sign both. You can sign either. You don't have to sign them at all. I encourage everyone to read each one carefully and sign it if they feel that way. There is definitely a growing community online that wants to know, how do I sign it too? We will figure that out. I feel badly to say at this moment we don't have an answer to that, but we certainly recognize other people will want to sign it as well. And we will figure that out and we will get that information out to people.
And when you say we, certainly people can look for you, but are there other people that they should be looking to online via Twitter or?
Sure, absolutely. So Fiona Charles, James Christie, Ian McGowitt, we kind of started this. There's a lot of people are signing it. We've taken pictures of it. We've put it on Twitter. We'll make sure the verbiage is out there so people can read it and really think about whether they want to sign it or not. We're trying to make it as accessible as we can.
And to be real clear for everybody watching, and I know there might be some confusion already, this is a grassroots effort. I mean, this is an effort of individuals for the community, correct?
It absolutely is, and I will definitely take responsibility for that. AST has not endorsed it.
Nope.
Probably like anybody in the community, if they were here and asked, hey, I have something I want to say, provided the forum, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean it's been endorsed by any company. This is individuals signing it.
That's right. That's right.
Written by and signed by.
The big push is anti-certification. Is that fair?
There's got to be a better way to
Makes it
word
sound
it.
so
I know
negative.
it sounds so negative, and I guess what I'm wondering is a lot of times I hear this come up, and certification or not, I think it's fair to say that in the U.S. certification isn't that big of a deal. I mean,
I agree.
There is some of it. I've even looked a little bit internationally about places that might require it as part of employment. I haven't been overly successful. Have you seen something
I'm like
else?
bubbling. Yes, I have
Okay.
seen something else. So here in the U.S., I think it's pretty easy not to be certified. I think a lot of companies don't even know it exists. Some of the ones that do may think it's interesting if you're certified, but that's about it.
Right.
In Europe, in multiple countries, I think Amsterdam and Sweden are two strong ones where certification is, I guess I would use the word rampant.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not certified, you could really struggle to find a job. So let's look at that for just a quick minute.
Sure.
Okay, so you need to be certified. I think the problem with a lot of executives making hiring decisions is they don't even know what it means. It just sounds good. It does sound good, doesn't
But
it?
isn't it-
Certified. Like, I give you a stamp and I
of
say
approval.
you're
Right.
okay and thumbs up, and I don't have
Right.
to think about it anymore when I interview you because allegedly you've been qualified by some other group somehow, and I'm not asking questions about that. And when you find out is that there's another group out there that's making a fair amount of money selling standards that they wrote that are not open for much discussion by other people, and they stamp you if they decide. And it's
But isn't the rationale not so much stamping, but isn't the rationale that at least they have a basic set of knowledge, or you're taking someone who's new to software testing and you're saying, okay, at least they know kind of the terms and,
They have a
and
basic
terminology?
vocabulary with which to deal with people. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
have
and
heard
isn't
that
there
argument
some
before.
value in that?
I have. So I think if you're going to be a professional, you need to know the language of your profession, whatever that profession is. There are other people who function in other professions who are not certified. You could take something else like, say, an electrician. So they have a certification program,
Yes.
they have a licensing program, and
True.
it means certain things in order to be able to pass certain levels. But you also have to show the work.
It's skill-based.
It's
Yeah,
skill-based.
Skill-based.
You have to show the work. You can't just go in, take an exam, memorize things, and then leave. I guess people could say that's true about lots of exams. You memorize things and you leave. You don't necessarily show proficiency of knowing when to pick what tool out of the toolbox in
Right.
order to apply it. As far as a common body of language, that's a tough one. You'd like to think that every tester worldwide would have like some agreement on certain words. What is a test case? What is a test plan? But they don't.
Well, and then we get in this room where you have a lot of people who already have some strong opinions on what the definitions are, and you still get people quibbling over, well, the way you phrased that
Right.
this way. And so
True.
I think it's hard to find consensus on some of the terms already, but like where do people start? Like where's the authoritative place to
So can we
go?
go to that for
Yeah.
a minute? So imagine you're a certification organization, you've got a glossary, you've got a table of contents, you've got a whole list of here's the alleged body of knowledge.
Sure.
Okay. Where in that body of knowledge does it allow or accommodate for the fact that other people don't agree with that definition? So if I were new to the field, didn't know anyone or anything, was certified and had sort of, this is my document, it tells me everything.
It tells me everything I need to know. Right.
Obviously, it can't tell you everything because there's an entire room filled with people here who don't agree with it. So what it tells you is that there's more to be learned than that. And so if you really want to have a broad-based knowledge in testing, that's one flavor to know. There's other communities that don't agree with that body.
Okay. So how is you and I have both done FDA regulated testing,
Yeah.
right? And there are regulations and there are certain things about doing that type of testing that you have to follow through on. There's documentation standards, all kinds of things. So how is this different than that? And what I mean by that is, I always looked at the FDA standard as a starting point. Okay, it's kind of the basics that you need to have in place, and I always tried to exceed what they expected. Is not this certification or any certification in this field similar in that it could arguably kind of be a basic set of knowledge, but to really excel as an employee, you need to go beyond. That's just something on the side. Or is it different than that?
I think it's different than that. You're right. So the FDA, if you really drill in and you read some of the things, like say CFR Part 21 on electronic signatures, you'll get a general guidance. But what you get from the FDA is, we're not trying to say that we know your business. We're not in the software business, right? We're giving you guidelines that we expect to see certain things. And it's very loose, which is both, frankly, a blessing and a curse. So it's a blessing in the sense that, hey, demonstrate, X, Y, and Z, but then it will leave it to you to figure out, well, how do you demonstrate that? And in software, sometimes some of those things are a little tricky to figure out how to demonstrate. You get into needing storing media, release versions, how are you going to contain that? It's not that simple. It's not just a document. You can say, well, it's here or it's not here. So it gets tricky. And the FDA leaves you to that. You go figure that out. We're just telling you, we need evidence. You're supposed to do X, Y, Z. Show me you did X, Y, Z. You figure out the particulars. In the certification realm, testing is their business. That is what they know. And so they have much more tighter proclamations about what thou shalt do, and gets much more prescriptive than directive.
Right. And now someone mentioned yesterday, they said, okay, well, there's no certification for software development. And everybody kind of agreed with that. And my reaction was, okay, that's not really a fair comparison, because oftentimes for you to be and this is an overgeneralization, so hopefully people online won't kill me for this. Oftentimes you go to university to become a developer, right? So you've got a 4-year college program, or maybe it was a technical school. Maybe it was a short course. You went to a class and you got a certificate, for example. So one could argue that the gap is the education gap. And in a lot of ways, a certification could fill that education gap until a university program comes around. What's your reaction to something like that?
Well, I guess my reaction to that would probably be more personally based. So I've gone through and I've read certification information, and I happened on it a little later in my career. So I've already been testing for about 20 years before I had read the certification. Didn't really find anything in the certification that would have helped me. I have a lot of other books on my bookshelf that I literally turn to on a regular basis. Well, that will help me on this one. This will help me on that one. I have colleagues I can reach out to. I have past work experiences, but I've never gone back to the alleged body of knowledge and said, wow, that was really helpful.
Right.
In fact, I've found it to be a kind of a bland collection of, it's not really helped.
I have gone through it, and I've taken the exam. So I have first-hand knowledge of what's involved with at least one of them, which will remain nameless for the time being.
Okay.
So,
As have I.
Yeah, right. So Dee and I have both gone through it. So when we speak about certification, and for the viewing audience, and I think Karen already knows this, we're trying to kind of bring forward the arguments. I'm trying to remove my personal opinion out of this.
It's hard.
Which is kind of tough at the moment. But one of the things that I learned was that a lot of people don't understand what's actually in it. Now, good or bad, right? Either way, they're speaking from a position of hearsay. And it's unfortunate, because I think arguments are better from people who've experienced it firsthand. And I don't see a lot of people who have taken it, although up until recently, talking about it publicly. I actually read a series of blog posts just last week. I think it was on, see, this is going to be a plug. I think it's on UTest's blog stream. They have an individual who had gotten their certification and talked about his experience. He talked about leading up to it, what he had heard about certifications, and then what he actually took from it and what he didn't take from it. And I would actually encourage people to check that out, because their experience was very similar to mine in that I entered the industry and I wasn't part of this community initially. The drumbeat was, hey, go get the certification, get some knowledge. It's a good course. And funny side story, that's how I got involved with AST. Was the instructor of that class was an AST board member, and she encouraged me. She said, okay, this learning is good, the class is good, the prep class, which is what it was, but the certification may not necessarily get you anywhere.
Right.
So you need to go further, you need to dig deeper, you need to get way beyond it, and you need to drive forward. And I encourage that of other people too.
Two comments on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one, there are a lot of issues that happen in life. Politics, decisions on zoning, all sorts of things that happen in life that people they're not always as steeped in the knowledge as we might hope to have that like really solid debate. To really give both sides a solid debate, you would have to be well immersed, well educated, well read, and up to date on the entirety of the problem as it were.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't have that, but they don't have that in a lot of other domains, and yet they vote. We elect presidents, we build countries, we do lots of things, and maybe never have as much of the depth of knowledge as we wish we did on certain things.
But isn't the difference, though, in this case, and this is actually one of my concerns with the petitions, I'm not against the idea of a petition, but they're so stark. It's not, let's have a deeper discussion, how might we be involved, how might we shape this, but rather, we don't like this, it needs to stop.
So the Agile Manifesto is very stark, and
Fair.
yet an entire community has been transitioning for over a decade at least now on doing it, and have lots of experience with it, have been finding a lot of success with it. I don't really know of very many people walking around saying, wow, I'm certified in Agile, which opens up a can of worms, because there are certification programs to be a Scrum Master or whatever the case may be.
I've been through some of those too.
Yep.
But some of the core people who founded that and believe in that and can come into any company and do coaching and whatnot, they're not certified. They're not certified in that either.
Right.
So actually, you could open that up again. So I want to go back to that. So somebody mentored you and they said, hey, go to the prep group and read up on that. And the certification might not be the thing. Part of what was probably beautiful in that was sitting around with another group of people discussing things.
Well, and what I got from the prep class, so it was a prep class for the exam. That's how it was designed.
Right.
And the instructor, who you and I both know, what she did was she said from the beginning, she goes, this is a prep class. We don't know the syllabus. We don't know the details of the exam. I'm going to share with you my real experiences, and I'm going to tell you how this really goes. And in retrospect, it was that actually gave me the knowledge. It wasn't the syllabus per se.
Right.
It was the class. It was the 2 or 3 days, I don't remember what it was, of her speaking about real experiences and providing contrary views. So she'd say, this is what the syllabus claims is correct. I can tell you from experience that there are 3, 4, 5 other ways to look at this, and here's what they are.
Right.
And I was allowed as kind of a viewer, an attendee, to discern what I wanted to do and what fit within my place of work, right?
Right.
Because even the syllabus didn't align, FDA regulated, right? It didn't align with what the FDA referred to things.
Right.
So for many weeks, I was constantly racking myself going, okay, this is what the official term is, but this is what the FDA calls it. How do I align these? And finally, one day I snapped. I was like, okay, you know what? This isn't about the terms. There's lots of terms.
Right.
I need to get past this certification constraint and open things up and say, okay, I need to fit my testing and my terminology within my company and what I'm doing, not the other way around.
So let me share an example based on that.
Sure.
So on my bookshelf of testing books and technology books, I have a lot of books on SQL. Love SQL. I'm pretty good at it. Pretty good in database things, like business intelligence projects. There's a lot of things I've done in that space. I could say that you have to know SQL as a tester. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know it, you're remiss. You're missing something. You shouldn't be certified.
Amateur.
I could say that.
Yeah.
However, I'll pick on D. Dee could come along and never work in a business intelligence project. She might never need to write SQL. She might know far more on mobile than I know and never need it. So one of the problems I think we have in the technology field is we have pockets of information. They're not like people. They don't disagree with each other. They're actually complementary in a very broad world. Technology is huge. And I often compare it to the medical community, right? Where, you're a knee specialist, it doesn't mean you're a podiatrist, right? So there's pockets of knowledge. So what body of knowledge would anyone need to have to be a tester? If I came up with a list, it could be wrong based on the things you worked on. I worked in software for more than 20 years before I worked on an FDA project and had any idea that there were any FDA regulations whatsoever around testing. Did that make me remiss in all the testing projects I worked on before? No, it means I worked on projects that had nothing to do with that.
Well, and all those experiences,
what a body of knowledge you'd have to have.
Yeah, so all the experiences that you bring in from, your prior days of working on this FDA project inform the way you're going to deal with processing the regulations and the things you need to do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I took a certification course, I had done it after being in this community for about 5 years, and I'd been testing for a while. And I took it twofold. One, I was curious because there's a lot of hype about it, and I wanted to know what it was about. And two, my employer required that I get one. And so in order to meet my annual performance analysis, I needed a certification. It didn't matter what it was.
Wow.
So I was hoping I could get something relevant out of it, And I didn't take a prep class. I did it on my own. I downloaded many pages of information, right? Read through it, agreed, disagreed, processed, asked questions of myself, but I did it all in a vacuum. I think Ben's experience was probably much more interesting than mine, right?
I didn't know anything.
I'm not going to say I fell asleep on the book several nights in a row, but either way, it was my experience that informed how I interpreted the material and whether I chose to use it in my professional life or not going forward. So, I think it's different for someone who doesn't know the industry coming in and saying, hey, this is the thing I need to know, and it scares me a little bit. So I see where you're coming from on that.
I actually, I don't want to name the organization, but there's one here in America. Somebody gave me the body of knowledge back when, and I went through and I read it after having worked as a tester for a long time. It was an interesting read, but it didn't help. And then one of the ones that's more known overseas, I went out and purchased the book because I felt similar to both of you. Okay, what's the buzz? What's going on here? Let me go in and read it and do the self-study guide and do the self-test. I mean, it's, sleazy when you're doing a test in a little workbook and you could look up the answers, but you have no reason to cheat yourself. So I did a self-exam as well. So it's not like I don't have exposure, but even that is a little bit difficult because you have to pay for it in order to even get in on the argument of it.
Right, and that makes it hard to evaluate these. And I think that if there was anything, I think being able to evaluate them is kind of a big deal. One of the things, let's hop to Twitter real quick. We've only got about 2 minutes left.
2 minutes, yeah.
So we're going to have to wrap this up pretty quick here. I got some feedback off of Twitter. All you need to know about the standard, the particular standard that we're discussing today, is the role of testing is verification and validation, which is also a definition the FDA has. So, full disclosure there.
Right.
We've got someone saying that you're 100% correct. There's nothing in the FDA rules that dictate how you do your work, which is absolutely true. And that's actually a much bigger discussion that I'd like to have someday, because
that could be a workshop.
Yeah, that's a big area to cover. And there's a wide divergence. There's a wide divergence of content and curricula in software academia. It's not standardized.
True.
Which arguably you could say about most topics in academia. That's why people select different schools. That's why you go to different programs. Some are known for business, some are known for computer sciences.
Or you follow even specific professors based on their ideas in the school they happen to teach at.
So for us, in context-driven testing,
there's
a real love of the experience report.
Yep.
And so what does that mean? That means I'm working on something. Let me explain the context to you so you understand the world I'm in, which could be anything from a mobile app to an FDA medical device. So, I mean, there's a wide range there. And here's how I'm testing that. Here's how I approach that. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's what I learned. That's what we share. That's
Right.
what this community shares. So it's experience-based, not
Absolutely.
book-based.
And on that, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Thank you, everybody, for this special session. Hopefully this conversation will keep going. This is just a starting point.